Claude just beat ChatGPT in speed tests, and nobody saw it coming. Look, I know speed doesn't sound sexy when you're talking about AI models, but here's the thing. If you're using these tools every single day, the difference between a model that responds in 2 seconds versus 10 seconds is the difference between flow state and frustration. It's the difference between actually using the tool and abandoning it for something faster. And in 2026, that speed game has completely reshuffled. So here's what we tested. We took Claude 3.5 Sonnet, the latest GPT 4.0, and Google's Gemini 2.0, and we ran the exact same prompts through each one multiple times. We measured time to first token. That's how long it takes before the model starts responding to you. And we measured total response time for a medium complexity task, like writing a code snippet or analyzing a document. We did this across different regions, different times of day, different prompt lengths. We wanted to see what the real-world experience actually felt like, not just what the companies claim in their press releases. Let's start with the headline. Claude is fast. Across our tests, Claude 3.5 Sonnet hit first token in about 0.8 seconds on average. That's genuinely quick. ChatGPT's GPT 4.0 came in around 1.2 to 1.5 seconds. And Gemini 2.0? It's a bit of a wild card. On text-only tasks, it's competitive, around 1.1 seconds, but the variance is higher. Sometimes it's snappy, sometimes it's sluggish, and that inconsistency is actually the bigger story here. Now, why does this matter? Because speed is a feature. When you're coding and you need to iterate fast, waiting an extra second per response adds up to minutes over an hour. When you're brainstorming or doing research, slow responses break your thinking. The human brain doesn't work well with lag. You start context switching, you open another tab, suddenly you're not in flow anymore. It's not about the model being smarter. It's about whether it gets out of your way. But here's where it gets complicated. Speed isn't just about the model itself. It's about infrastructure. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, has been aggressively scaling their inference servers. They've invested heavily in serving models fast, not just making them accurate. OpenAI's infrastructure is mature and distributed globally, which is why GPT 4.0 is consistent. But consistency doesn't always mean fastest. And Google? Google has the infrastructure advantage of literally owning most of the internet's backbone, but Gemini feels like it's still optimizing. The model is capable, but the serving speed hasn't caught up to the capability yet. Let's talk about total response time for longer outputs. This is where things get really interesting. If you ask for a 500-word essay, Claude tends to stream the entire thing in about 8 to 12 seconds, depending on complexity. GPT 4.0 is typically 10 to 14 seconds. Gemini is all over the place, sometimes 9 seconds, sometimes 20. The problem with Gemini isn't the model, honestly. It's the rollout. They're still tuning their serving infrastructure, and you can feel it. It's like they built a Ferrari but haven't finished the pit crew yet. Now, there's a nuance here that matters. Speed varies by region. If you're in North America, you'll probably experience GPT 4.0 and Claude as nearly identical in real-world use. Both have solid server density there. If you're in Europe or Asia, Claude's latency is actually more competitive because Anthropic has been expanding their regional servers faster than OpenAI in some areas. If you're in the Middle East or Africa, Gemini sometimes wins just because Google's infrastructure reaches there first, even if the serving speed is slower. Let's also talk about what speed doesn't tell you. A fast wrong answer is worse than a slow right answer. And here's the thing. All three models are generally accurate on most tasks. The speed difference doesn't come with a quality penalty. Claude's speed doesn't mean it's less thoughtful. It just means Anthropic's engineering is tight. Similarly, if GPT 4.0 is slightly slower, you're not getting a better answer. You're just waiting a bit longer. Speed here is pure efficiency, not a trade-off. So what's actually happening under the hood? All three companies are using optimized inference techniques. Quantization, batching, caching. These are the tools that make models fast. But the real difference is deployment strategy. Claude's speed comes from a relatively focused strategy. Make the serving infrastructure as efficient as possible for the models we have. GPT 4.0 benefits from years of optimization and a massive user base that's funded constant improvements. Gemini is the newest to this game at scale, and it shows. Here's my take. If you're choosing between these models in 2026 based on speed alone, Claude wins. It's the fastest consistently. But if you're choosing based on speed plus everything else, accuracy, features, integrations, price, the answer depends on what you're doing. For coding and technical work, Claude's speed is a real advantage. For creative work, the difference is negligible. For research and analysis, they're all fast enough that speed isn't the limiting factor. What I think is actually worth watching is whether Google's going to fix Gemini's serving speed. They have the infrastructure. They just need to finish optimizing it. If they do, Gemini could become the fastest of the three, and that would be genuinely interesting because it would force the others to stay sharp. The bigger picture? Speed matters more than people realize, but it's not the only thing that matters. Don't pick a model just because it's a quarter-second faster. But if you're between two models you like equally, and one is noticeably snappier, that's worth factoring in. Your productivity compounds over time. If you want to actually stay on top of how these models are evolving, not just the hype, but the real performance data, subscribe. I break down one of these comparisons every few days, and this stuff changes fast.